I am super excited about this episode of The Manager's Mic because I've been begging this person for months, actually over a year now, to do this podcast. And I gotta say, of all the cold contacting, you wouldn't think it, but my wife's the hardest one to get on this podcast. Now I've convinced her finally. That's because I'm taking her out on a date night tonight. Give it up for my awesome, smart wife, Tricia.
Thank you, husband of mine. I am very happy to be here. And I will say that although I have been ducking his invitations to come onto the podcast, I have still been behind the scenes helping and promoting content and looking at many, many versions of the title and the different pictures that he chooses and all the taglines and everything. I feel intimately connected to it, even though I'm just now coming on. And I like to give behind every great woman is a man that's doing a podcast. So I want to make sure that he gets all of his limelight as well. So I'm grateful to be here, second to you.
That's why I've been married 10 years so long now, because you always know exactly what to say, even when I don't have the words. Just in case, babe, because I can call you that, I think you should professionally tell people about you, because one of the things, well, I know when we first started getting to know each other 10 years ago, we were married 10 years. That is just crazy to say out loud still on some level. I'm super proud of it and super happy about it. Is just like who you are also professionally, because I know, and I could do your introduction, but you have a nicer voice than me. So why don't you speak to that, and then we'll get into the topic at hand.
I have been working as a professional in higher education for over 20 years. I started off as a resident advisor back in the day. I was a first generation college student, and I went to college and was just awestruck by the experience of being on a college campus. I learned about being an RA, and I had mentors and people around me who told me, you like college a lot, you could work here forever as a professional. And so I went on and got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. And then I went on and got a Ph.D., all things that I didn't expect to really do. And I fell in love with the college environment. I've been working to serve students, college students, every year of college students, from first years on through PhD students, in multiple capacities and at multiple kinds of institutions across the country, small, large, private, public. I have gotten a lot of experience doing that. Some of it was on the job training, and a lot of it was just watching other people do it and learning from them. And I've learned a few things. I will never profess to be an expert on those things. There are some things I'm an expert on, but when it comes to managing people and leading people, I try to do it the best I can. And I feel like it's something that I always kind of have to relearn year after year. And when I get new staff who report to me, and then the people who report to me have people who report to them, and they bring new challenges to me that we kind of have to problem solve and work through. And I think your podcast is very helpful because not a lot of people get formal managerial training. Maybe you get it in like an MBA program or something, but so much of it comes from being on the job and making some mistakes and fixing them and trying to do a little bit better each time. I want to bring maybe some different perspectives to you.
Yeah, I like how you said it's your podcast. And here's the reality. It's our podcast. Always, because everything we share is together. And for those who've heard other episodes, you know this. I was a college dropout. A lot of people don't know this. The reason, I think a big reason, catalyst for me to even go back to college, was because my wife's story when we first started dating. Because she was very inspiring to me through the fact that I was like, wow, I need to do this. And plus she said she'd leave me if I didn't. Not really. I just said that to joke around. I have to sometimes remember we're married and you're still a civilian. You didn't live the comedian life I did. I have to remember that. It's still, that's what you remember, that guy used to say that. So here's what we're going to do. What's kind of behind this episode is my wife brought to me a really valuable article, and I'm going to share it just in the small chance you don't know what Korn Ferry is. We're going to go through this content What's interesting about Korn Ferry, I don't know if you knew this, but my old manager, the military guy, actually had recommended that Korn Ferry book that I have in my library, the FYI one. You've seen it in my office.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And which is why I like them as a source. And military people, education people, at least from my understanding, they leverage Korn Ferry. Maybe you could speak a little bit more about what Korn Ferry is, just in the off chance someone's like, what's that? Never heard of it.
Signed up to this for this newsletter. I get these updates pretty regularly, and I think it's a newsletter for around like human resources kinds of topics. And I peruse it every time I get it, and I'll look at just different articles. And this one in particular spoke to me because it's all about things that bosses should avoid. And as a boss, I look at stuff like this to be like, oh gosh, what of this have I done? What have I not done? And what do I need to make sure I keep on my radar so I can avoid it? Because sometimes there are just things that you don't know that you're doing that can be unintentionally problematic.
For me, your management experience really comes, or at least your leadership experience, I guess might be the right way to say it, comes from the world of like education. While like for me, on the other hand, it's just through like grit. Like when I used to remember when I was in that CrossFit gym, that's like one reference point. It's always been scattered. Like it's always come from like grit and sales, which is, I don't know, maybe that's why you have more leadership experience than me. And that's why I've been married 10 years. Maybe you're using some tricks on me. It's
If
my
my tricks
guess.
were working, you would pick up your laundry a lot more
I
regularly.
pick it up sometimes. The title is The Seven No-Nos New Bosses Should Avoid. I thought this was pretty interesting when I read through it. This one kind of, they had a, what is it here? An advisory firm here with Gartner of 60% of new managers fail within the first 24 months. That's pretty huge. I'm surprised this here is not in bold. What we're going to do is we're going to go through each one. We're going to talk through it. You'll be the subject matter expert. This is me for this. And then I'll try to layer in and ask you some questions. And then after that, I'll take you out on a date. How's that sound?
Hi, this is a quid pro quo situation.
The first one is don't be a know-it-all. But when you hear like don't be a know-it-all, what does that say to you? If you were to like, what are three things that come to mind around don't be a know-it-all?
I will say the first thing that came to mind, because again, this is targeted toward new bosses. And I think about when I was a new boss, I probably did this and I probably still do this in some capacity because since I've been working in this field for a long time, I've seen a lot of situations where I feel pretty confident that I know a lot about the field, about college students, about higher education, about institutions, about programs and initiatives that are designed to support college students and programs and initiatives that staff create and move forward. And I've seen things work and I've seen things not work. And so there are times when I'm like, I do know a lot. But where I am thoughtful now is that I don't know everything. And the reason I've gotten to this place of being like, it's okay that I don't know it all. I know enough to be dangerous, but also I work with college students every year, every 4 years. There's a brand new crop of them that come in. While I understand college students in general, like there are some theories that dictate how we serve students and people as adults. Every generation is different. The slang is different. What resonates with students is different. And so there are a lot of things I give up in terms of like, I really don't know it all. And so I have to go to the source. And it's the same with managing people. I don't know how each individual person prefers to be supervised or managed or led or motivated. That's where supervision and management continues to be a constantly moving target for me because I think I've done it well. And then there are some people that I just feel like, gosh, I'm missing the mark. And so I'm constantly trying to figure them out and figure out the best way to serve them. And I want to coach and have them ask me questions about what do you think about this? And I can share a story based on my experience to say, this is what I know. And you take that and you make a decision and we will work through the outcome together. So I think there are pieces of this where I do know pretty well what I think should happen, and I want to co-create that with the people who I get to work with.
It's always funny to me is it's funny how you talk about it in college students, and you know that world better than me, obviously. But I guess for me in the corporate world, I still see this habit where there's this need to, I've seen this in meetings. I'll give you an example. Somebody will, before they just go right into giving advice, they've already gone through the hiring process, they kind of feel the need to flex who they are and then give advice. I've seen that like micro moment in meetings. And it's always weird to me because, like, the first thought in my head is, like, who is that for and what are you doing that for? What's the point of that? It kind of goes back to that don't be a know it all thing. I feel like when you do something like that, me personally, that just makes you feel. I think it comes across, and this is an opinion, this doesn't mean it's gospel. I think it comes across a little arrogant. And I know sometimes I have been told I'm arrogant, not intentionally, but I feel like just that little thing of being like, I was in sales, I'm just making this up, for like 5 years. I was a top performer. I know this topic, and here's my recommendation, versus like just going to the recommendation. What are you doing? I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
You probably don't want to hear this, but I do think, at least in my experience, it's been a little different as a woman and as someone who has grown up always trying to be humble. And I'm not known for flashing my accomplishments in a meeting to be like, well, I have a PhD in higher education and student affairs. I do. And especially on a college campus, that isn't all that flashy because lots of people have PhDs on a college campus. So it isn't that uncommon. But I've been in spaces where people try to like explain college students to me or explain how the university works. And I've worked in this institution for longer than they have. I do believe that based on the doctoral degree that I have, I know I am considered an expert according to the institution that granted me the terminal degree. I am pretty expert when it comes to that, but I don't believe that that's something that I don't flash that around in a meeting. I will usually accompany my expertise with a story or an example instead of saying, well, my PhD tells me X, Y, or Z. Instead, I'll say, last year we tried to institute that, and here's where we didn't hit the mark. So maybe we can try it again this year, but what might we do different to arrive at a different outcome? And then again, it's back to bringing it to us both or us, a group, to determine how we can work on that together.
Thing that always I have to remember, and you do a good job reminding me of this, is that there is still a gender divide. I see things like groups and like Bergs, like women Bergs, stuff like that. But there is a tough spot for, I think, and I'm assuming this, correct me if I'm wrong, women have the need to feel like they have to flex who they are before making a recommendation. Is that kind of like a common thing you've heard, or am I just assuming that? Because I know you've kind of like told me about this, we've had dinner together and stuff, and I know sometimes I've kind of played devil's advocate. I'm like, no, but, and you like, speak about that, because I still feel like that's still a gap for me.
I've only ever worked in higher education. So I do think corporate, different industries are very different. And in my line of work, I've worked mostly, many of the roles I've had have been held mostly by women. And then those in power have tended to be men. There are times when my experience probably doesn't mirror what happens in other industries. And then there are times that it does, where I just believe that any minority, whether that is your gender, race, ethnicity, whatever that might be, and then depending on the industry, you might be a minority in a particular industry, one way or the other, feels like sometimes you do have to do extra work just to be like considered okay and average and to have a seat at the table. And so that is part of the reason I got a terminal degree, so that at a college, on a college campus, I'm at the top of the academic kind of threshold to be taken seriously. And I have had experiences where simply because of having the PhD, I am listened to differently than I was before I had the PhD. And it's been pretty stark, where I've said the same thing pretty much the exact same way, but because I have the extra letters, someone perks their ears up, or someone is just like, oh, okay, well, we'll give you the money to do that. Or now you get to supervise people because you have the PhD. Wait, well, I was doing it pretty well before. How come I couldn't supervise people before? What is it about this that now makes me acceptable?
I know myself as a male, I need to be better about remembering everybody has value, with or without those credentials. It helps, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's why I try to advocate for as many other people as I possibly can, because I have earned my seat at certain tables. And so when it comes to like not knowing everything, I try to share the credit as much as I can. When something is a success, I know that it's not just because of me. Maybe it was my idea in some way, but I wasn't the one that actually moved it forward. I wasn't the one on the ground teaching that class or running that program or hosting that event. And so that's why I can't know it all, because I simply can't do this job well without my team.
Well, it's good that you said that, because that gets me into number 2 here, which is don't make knee-jerk decisions. You've talked a lot about your PhD, and I've heard about it for so long. Hey, you got to listen to me because I have a PhD husband.
Sometimes that's the only way I
Yeah.
get you to listen to me.
We
See?
got to have kids because I have a PhD husband. You got to mop the floor because you have a PhD. It's like, you don't have to keep
Still,
saying that.
I'm
I've been
still
here
waiting.
10 years, whatever. Let's talk about make knee-jerk decisions. So what does good look like around that? You've seen a lot of different versions and different teams, and you've heard a lot because you also have, coached a lot of different varieties of people.
I was saying before, when it comes to like not being a know-it-all but having a lot of experience, there are times when I'm faced with a very similar situation that I've experienced at another institution. And so it is easy for me to say in my brain to say, oops, when we had that problem with this staff member before, or I experienced this kind of pushback before, this is what worked. And I have to remind myself that this is a different person. It's often there's a different nuance to the situation, and I do need to take some time. And especially when it comes to like personnel decisions, there are policies and procedures that differ at different places, and so you got to make sure that you align with those as well. So what I thought I could do quickly and make this decision at one place was okay, but here maybe it isn't, because we got to follow a different kind of path. I think about a former colleague of mine who was new at an institution and came in and kind of immediately reorganized. And it was like a pretty big upheaval. When I came into my team, I thought about a reorganization, but I was like, I can't just immediately come in and start moving people around and messing with everybody's flow. Although I did change things a little bit, I've now been in this role for 2.5 years, and I'm just now getting ready to move, not reorganize, but shift some work differently. And I'm even a little nervous about how people are going to respond to that 2.5 years in. But in the back of my mind, I've wanted to do this probably from the get-go, but I knew better, because I got to build trust with people. I got to figure out where are people, where their heads at, help them understand who I am and why I'm making these decisions. I'm not making the decisions to mess them up or to make things harder, but rather to make it easier on the students, like operational excellence, streamlining things, making things easier for people.
That's
And
fancy.
so I know. But like
Operational excellence.
I'm not actually good at making knee-jerk decisions. Like even with my children, I'm like, I don't know how to respond to what they just said. I want to say this, but I have to wait, talk about it with my husband and figure out
Your
what to say.
children? Your children, if I heard you correctly?
Yes,
Something I don't know, I think it's our children last time I checked.
our child.
Operational excellence, but that one. It's okay, you have a
Sorry.
PhD, that's all. There's no such thing as good change management. I hear that a lot. Nobody likes change, typically. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's people get comfortable. There was an old Tony Robbins CD. I remember I was in between appointments once, and he said, if you get too comfortable, you can lose progress. Talk about what could be done differently to help change management go a little better in your experience. We're using operational excellence as kind of like a baseline. Like, here's how you can make change management better, even though people don't like change. Maybe you could touch on that.
I try to be as democratic of a leader as I can, where I want people to feel like my team to feel like they are a part of the change, that they're coming up with what should change together. And it isn't just me waltzing in and saying, well, because I have this background and this experience, we should do it this way. Because I don't like that. I'm not on the ground doing the work that my team is doing. And so I absolutely have a vision. I absolutely have ideas of where we should be headed. In fact, in my current role, we are getting ready to launch our strategic planning effort where we're going to put together a brand new 3-year strategic plan. And where I'm headed with it is our retreat is a work retreat. And I'm giving them worksheets to work on in breakout groups. And the worksheets are asking them, using all this data that we have gathered from all of our stakeholders, what are the 3 to 5 key priority areas that we need to be focused on for the next 3 years? And how do we get there? What are the success metrics? And in the back of my mind, I mean, I've looked over all this data and there are some real diamonds in there, but nothing in there is so brand new to me. I am very clear on where we need to head. And in fact, I'm clear on where we need to head for like the next 5 to 10 years, but you need a strategic plan that can be agile. The economy and the job market are very, very dynamic and uncertain and ever changing. And so we're sticking to a 3-year plan, not a 5 to 10 for now. They're going to work through it. And I'm going to be a part of those conversations so that this is coming from them. Like they're reading the same stuff I'm reading, and we're going to talk through. This is what you all think. This is where we've arrived at consensus. Here's where we don't have consensus. Let's talk it through, knowing that not everybody's thing is going to make it to the top 3 to 5, but can we talk about why that is and maybe get on the same page about it? I think that approach, when I have been led that way, when I at least had a say in it, like I could talk about it and it didn't seem like it was just kind of handed to me, that helped me feel a little bit better about the change, even when I didn't like the change. But at least I had a time to say, I don't like this change. I think we should be going a different direction. But okay, the leader said, we're going to go this direction instead. But I said my 2 cents, and that helped me feel better about it because change is uncomfortable for a lot of people. And I think you can find a little more comfort, at least in the having the space to talk about the discomfort.
You have the biggest critic in front of you who it feels like no matter what you say or what you do, they just are not getting it. Because I think there's this other side of management where there's like, dude, there's just this one guy who doesn't get it. What would you say to that one guy to help move the needle and shift the paradigm to that one person? Like, what would that sound like if you had to write a script or start writing the playbook? And this
If
is
they say
obviously
that they
on
don't
the
like the
spot.
change,
I don't like anything you have to say. Sounds a lot like me. No, I'm kidding. I don't care. Whatever. Let's take the most critical. What do you say to that person to start to move the needle? I mean, obviously you can't save everybody, but just if you had to say something to wave the magic wand, what could maybe work?
oh, well, it depends. Is this a one-on-one with someone? Is this, because I've
Always
had this.
one-on-one. Let's
Okay.
just say one-on-one, because you can't share that. You can't. This is also made up, by the way. This isn't like.
But I've
I'm
had that
just
happen. I've had
okay.
someone who has said in front of me, in front of an entire team, I don't like what you're doing. I miss our old boss. Like, you are awful. And it really hurt. And I took it very personally. And I don't remember exactly what I said in that moment, but I do remember running to my office after that meeting and crying. And in fact, one of my staff members knocked on my office door, and I tried to like pretend that I wasn't crying, but it was clear that I was. And she hugged me. She's like, I'm so sorry that you had to experience that. And that was very triggering and very defining for me as a young professional. And I don't know what I did. Maybe I did something to anger that person, but I've never had that experience since. Thankfully, I have had people, and no one has blatantly said to me one-on-one, I don't like anything you're doing. It's awful. But I have had pushback. And I think over time, I have learned to try not to take that as personally as I did back then, but I still do take it personally because I care a lot about my team and I care a lot about the work that we do together. And when someone doesn't feel like they're getting what they need out of that or feel like it's working, I want to try to figure out why. My
Mm.
question to them is, tell me why. Tell me what's going on. And maybe that's not the best approach because it is kind of like I'm trying to figure them out as a person, and
Okay.
we're also trying not to make this personal, but
Yeah.
usually there's like, hurt people, and there's something
Yeah.
going on with somebody where it's awful when you have change happening at home and change happening at work and change happening in the world, and it can be a lot, and I don't know what else somebody is experiencing if they don't tell me. And so, I mean,
Yeah.
the only constant is change, right? Like I work in higher education where even without the current socio-political climate that we are in, higher ed still is very dynamic because we always have students circulating in and out. They come in, they graduate, they come back in, and we have new staff. I don't really get the luxury of just doing the same thing over and over, even as much as it's an institution, it's a system, and change can
Yeah.
be slow within certain systems. But I don't operate that way because I'm constantly trying to think about what is in the best interests of students this at this point in time. And so we got to take it to the next level. Even if we're doing the exact same thing, we got to shift our percentages, or we have to like figure out what's the next metric that we want to meet. Is it more students? Is it higher levels? Is it whatever it might be? And maybe that's just my own leadership style is and I tell people from the outset that I'm impatient and I don't want to just rest on our laurels. And it doesn't mean I'm going to
You
change
never.
everything all the time. I know. But I kind of warn people from the get go, if that isn't something that you're down with, let's talk about it, because I'm not, that's me. And that's the work that we have to do for students. And so if you struggle with that, how can I help you either figure out how to handle that in a better way, or potentially transition out of the work into something else where you can be a bit more static? And that's not trying to be rude, but that's just how I see this work, and I make it very clear to people from the get go. I mean, there's a lot of times I tell people now, I remember saying this in my interview 2.5 years ago, and you were on my interview, you know. And so I'm pretty authentic in that way. What you see is what you get.
You're good about that. Whenever we, even in our own home, when there's challenges, we talk through it. Or at least you're better at bringing it. I know sometimes I go over the moon sometimes, and I'm like, nope, that's it. And you're like, no, let's talk about it. I'm like, no, I don't want to hire this person, this project. They took too long, but you've always kind of centered me. So that kind of brings me in. We have to be part of the system. One of my favorite lines. And now that kind of brings us into, we did it this way at my old job. And that kind of plays into that point a little bit, where people say and I've heard this before, where people say you are just part of the system, Paul. Like I've heard that, like you're just part of the system. But the system does have to change sometimes. So under this topic in this article, don't say we did this at my old job, which you could technically say we did this as part of our old system. Maybe we could speak to how to avoid this and this no for new managers.
I have worked at a lot of different colleges and universities. And I think early on, I probably said this a few times, like, oh, at X institution or Y college. And I feel like, I don't know if somebody gave me that feedback directly, or if I heard someone else say, oh gosh, if I hear this person mention their undergrad another time, I'm going to lose my mind. And so I've been very cognizant of that. And I know every institution is very, very different. And I will probably get a lot of flack for this, but every college or university tries to think they are the most special. And they are, because there are little nuances, there are unique things about the institution related to like their traditions or the student body or the campus itself that you have to understand. By and large, at least in my experience, often they are more similar than they are dissimilar, even though I've worked at small places and big places and private institutions and public institutions. There are certainly policies and things that are different that I always have to relearn and remember. I've been very careful. What was it like at X college? How did I college do that? Or how did X institution handle this? So it's funny how it kind of comes full circle, where I tried for a period of time to not mention anything about any of those other places. And now I do think, I mean, look at the way that jobs are right now. Most people are job hopping a lot. And
Yeah.
in some cases, that is a benefit because you do bring different perspectives from different firms or different industries to say, hey, what if we tried this? Kind of have your fresh eyes. And I
Mm.
think that we did it this way at my old job could be seen as a no-no, but it could also be seen as a way to like add new perspective, as long as you're not doing it to be like, oh, this place was so much better, but just to say, hey, here's how they're responding, and they're a competitor. So maybe it's interesting for us to think about that. How can we add our own distinctive touch to it?
I feel like you get into like the whole idea of fresh eyes, new perspective, and then you have the variable of turnover in that. And at some point, that's when people just don't feel valued. I think a lot of what we talk about in higher ed, I think, is very, very transferable to corporate because I've seen it on both sides. My concern around that topic is that whole fresh eyes thing. Fresh eyes, is that always just exclusive to an outside hire, you think, or is there more there?
I don't think it has to be external. I think, especially since I work at a big place now, I've hired in people who've worked in different parts of the institution before. I mean, my goodness, I come from, like, I work in a career center now. Where I started was in housing, and I worked as a hall director living with college students. And now I help college students get jobs and talk about the benefit of a degree and how to articulate the transferable skills of that. It's very different work, and I think most of the time the perspective I bring to this work is pretty fresh because I didn't grow up in this particular field. I don't have 20 plus years of career services experience. I have 20 plus years of higher ed experience, and it's been in different sectors of higher ed. And I think that is a benefit to the work I do because I'm not stuck in a we've always done it this way kind of mentality, which can be really hard to get out of from what I've seen.
You're so smart.
I
Now
got to
you
say
get
anything to get my date night.
now you'll have two drinks. So you're like, why am I doing this podcast on a Saturday when I should be out with my husband? Let's see the next one. Don't treat don't treat your people as mere cogs. For Korn Ferry, I think that's kind of weird that we did this way at my old job to don't treat people as mere cogs. By the way, we were talking about systems. I didn't plan for that to pop up, but what is your mindset around that? And then I have some thoughts too.
I don't think I've ever seen my team as just like part of the system. Like when you told me somebody said that to you, I was dumbfounded because I was just like, I would never say that to my team. In fact, one of the things that I appreciate about the work that I do is that, at least for the most part, most of the team who reports to me, I've done some semblance of the work that they do. Maybe not 100%, but I have a good working knowledge of their day to day because I've done pieces and parts of it. And so I have a deeper understanding of their pain points, of what they enjoy about their work. And I try every day to be thinking about how can I make their jobs easier? Because I know how hard
Yeah.
work can be, and especially in our line of work, it can feel kind of thankless sometimes. I mean, we don't get
Oh,
some of the incentives that you might find in corporate where you get a bonus, or you get, if you meet these metrics, you get a gift card, or you get extra days off or something. And I look for those kinds of incentives, but I don't often get them. And a lot of the reason that many of my team folks who work in higher ed, we often do it for the intrinsic motivation. I love helping students learn, or I love helping students achieve their dreams, or I love it when a student tells me they got their dream job and it's because I helped them with their resume, or I helped them interview and they were able to refine their skills. Sometimes a student will come to one of my staff members and tell them, I got this job because of you. And sometimes they won't even say thank you, or they will, but they're trying to say it by saying, I got the job because of you. Thank you. For me, anytime I've ever gotten those kinds of emails from students, I put them away in a folder in my
Oh,
Outlook that's called When You're Feeling Down, because they don't come all that often. I might get them like years later after I've worked with a student, or even with a staff member who reports to me. Like maybe they move on to another job. And I always wonder, did I make any kind of impact with them? Is there anything that I did well? Because sometimes I don't know. And
yeah.
when they reach out to me on LinkedIn and they say, you know what, we have a mutual friend in common, and I told them all about how great you are, that'll last me for a good 2 years. I won't need another thank you for a while, because I know people aren't just doing the job to make a paycheck. I know we all need to make money. We all got to feed our families and live our lives. I think my staff, every single one of them could go off and work in any other industry and probably make more money, and I encourage them to do that if that is their dream. And I hope
Right.
that they'll stick around with me and on my team for as long as they want to, so that they're not
Yeah.
like feeling forced to be there. And so I try to make that experience as personable and palatable as possible, knowing that not everybody is there to be best friends, not everybody is there to hang out all the time, but you spend a lot of your time at work or working and with a group of people. And so I
Yeah.
try to be a human with them. I mean, every single one of my one-on-ones with my staff, the very first thing I'm talking about is, how are you doing? How was your weekend? And I don't need to go into intimate details or anything. If you had a bad weekend, or if something stressful is coming up in your life, that helps me then kind of calibrate what's our conversation going to look like, especially if we have to talk tasks or metrics, or maybe I have some constructive criticism to give you. Maybe I'm going to deliver that in a different kind of way than normal, because you're really going through it. Or maybe I'm going to wait and not give you that
Yeah.
constructive feedback immediately because it's not the right time. And that to me is just a humane way of managing people. And gosh, I tell people all the time, the work will always be there. There's no
Yeah.
reason to be working like 12 hours a day or on the weekend if you can help it, because it'll always be there. Your health, your wellness, your family, they won't all be there. So this one to
Yeah.
me just feels like a no-brainer.
You're right of a few things. One, that acronym HALT. You should never talk to someone when they're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. That one always
Yeah.
reminds me. That's a
Yeah.
big one. And when I think about the person who said that, the interesting thing was, it never offended me, because one of the things I don't have and you don't have is we don't have military experience together. And this person came from that background. So it wasn't like an offensive thing. It was more like, I kind of respected, like, we're going to have a military person on here in like 2 or 3 weeks. Spoiler alert. I kind of respect that from who it came from. I think if it came from, and maybe this is just my own personal bias talking, if it came from, like, I don't know, a talking dog, it would be weird. I guess this is what comes to my mind. I say that because I don't like to name names, and I just create, you know me. I like to live sometimes in a fantasy. We're just gonna wrap up the last three because my wife is wanting to
I'm
get
a
out of
micromanager.
here.
The last one says not to micromanage, and
Let's
here I
see.
am
Hold on.
like,
It says, See, you didn't even know it was coming. So let's rope all these three together.
okay.
Don't be too mean or too nice. Don't be vague. And the one you should have not done just now is don't micromanage, which is the last one. And you know they did that on purpose because it's a big one. Rapid fire, hit all three, and then I'll take you out tonight because you're so kind to give me your time to do a podcast with me.
I'm telling you, don't be too nice or too mean. I have to acknowledge that as a woman, and I know I'm not trying to be like gender gapping here or anything, but in my experience, this is a hard one. It's fraught because, okay, if I'm too nice, that people can walk all over me, right? But that's expected of me as a woman who works in a helping field. I help people.
Right.
I want to help students. I want to help my staff. And again, you just heard me say that I'm trying to not see people as cogs. I want to be humane with them. But the problem then lies in if I am too nice and they take advantage of the fee that I have offered or my informal communication style with them. And then I have to go to the opposite end and then I can be too mean, in which case I am seen as a that's the hard part as a woman of how do I find that happy medium of being assertive, but not
Yeah.
too assertive or sensitive to my staff's needs, but not too sensitive. This is it's where it's hard. I believe that my style has been that I trust that people are adults. The people who report to me are
Yeah.
adult people. And so I err on the side of I'm going to be flexible with you. I'm going to trust that you're going to do your job. And if you don't, we have metrics that hopefully will help me support that to say, I said you could have flexible work, but your work isn't done and you're not meeting deadlines. How do we figure something out here? I want to start with being not too nice, but nice to begin with, and then give me a reason if I got to get a little mean. I don't know if it works necessarily, but it's the style that I go with because it's tough as a woman to find that happy medium.
No, I know. And I don't know, actually. I say I know, but I don't know truly. You know not to micromanage. I know from my experiences that doesn't work with me. Because the one thing I do like about some bosses I've had in the past is they'll say, own your deadlines, own your work, and you'll never ever have to worry about career stress. Not never, but you'll have less career stress.
We miss don't be vague too. And I always try to work on this one too with my communication style to be really clear about what I hope for in terms of a vision and making that easy for people to understand. And I try to have people tell me when something is not clear. I don't know that I speak super vaguely because I am pretty clear
You
in
have a
like what I
PhD.
hope exactly. But I think I know where I want us to head. And so vagueness is not usually something that I struggle with, but I could see how as a new professional that may have been
Yeah.
because my visions probably weren't as crisp. But micromanaging, again, I know that there are lots of folks who have experience with that. And I have been micromanaged where there are days I wish I could micromanage my schedule. And I don't mean this to be like, oh, I'm so busy, but I'm pretty busy. I got a lot of people to serve and I got a lot of
Yeah.
people that I have to talk to on the regular. And I simply don't have the time or the brain space or the capacity to sit and monitor somebody's calendar or to make sure that their task lists are exactly up to date or to say, okay, our due date is this time. How are you tracking on that? I'll ask you those things in a one on one. But outside of that, my expectation is that you're just tracking through it so that the next time we meet, you're giving me a status update on it. Or if the next time we meet it's due, it's just going to be done. And that can
Yeah.
go in the too mean or the too nice piece too of have I been too nice to you? Because the deadline has come and gone and I don't
Yeah.
have the deliverables. So what do we do here? Do I have to micromanage you? I don't think most people like to be micromanaged, but it's along those same lines of give me a reason not to. If I have to, I will build things into my calendar to check up on yours or do
That's
what needs to be done, but I don't want to have to do that. And thankfully, I've had very talented people working for me where I I don't know that I've ever had to really be that nitpicky about people's work. And maybe it's because that's happened to me. I mean, I had to fill out a spreadsheet one time of exactly how I was spending my week. And then
really. I don't
I
remember this.
added a line on that spreadsheet for filling out this spreadsheet because it took me like over an hour. And that was so long ago, but I vividly remember just how annoying that was and how untrustworthy it
I
was.
never.
And
This is
yeah, but like
interesting.
you gotta see what I'm doing with my day. Do you not trust that I'm working? That's just really, why? And so I don't ever
Tough.
want somebody to experience that. And unfortunately, I have lots of people who work for me who it's their very first professional job. And I have people who've been working in that role for 20 plus years and then everything in between. And so sometimes people don't exactly know what their work style is and what they need. And so I try not to do this, but in some cases I may have to, so that they feel like they know kind of the expectations. But thankfully, so far, I haven't had to do this
Well, you didn't just
other
do
than
your
with my
hair.
husband.
Oh, yeah, I knew I was waiting for that
I had to
one.
wrap that in.
Yeah, I knew that I was waiting for that one. I was like, oh, I was gonna, you know what? I was gonna say, yeah, you never micromanage. Yeah, I could make a sarcastic face. All right, well, beautiful. I know you didn't just do your hair for this podcast. I owe you a date night. And if anybody hasn't already followed or or listened to other podcasts, check us out. And I look forward to taking you out on more date nights, beautiful. Contingent on you do more podcasts with me, of course. That's the
All right,
truth.
I promise.
All right. I'm holding you to it. All right,
Okay.
beautiful. Let's go
Thanks
out.
for having me.
Because I got to put cologne on. All right.
Love you.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.